Thank you for coming. I'd like to call this school board meeting of Tuesday, August 21st to order. Member Sandstead, would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Oh, you need your thing on. I got you.
Member Gorham.
Present.
Chair Kirby.
Here.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Here. Member
Lofald.
Here.
Member Oswald.
Here.
I am here. Member Trinka.
Here.
Superintendent Gronseth.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Horton.
Here.
Deputy Clerk excused at the moment. Secretary Dolans.
Here.
Secretary Thibault.
Here.
And Student Representative Carlos.
Here.
And Student Representative White. We have a quorum here.
Thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Next we have approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Second.
Seconded by Member Gorham. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then that passes unanimously, 7-0. Next is approving our minutes. The first is of the regular school board meeting of July 17th, 2018. Can I have a motion to approve these?
So moved.
Moved by Member Lofald. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Sandstead. Any discussion, additions, corrections? Seeing none, then all in favor of approving the regular school board meeting minutes of July 17th as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then this passes unanimously. And finally, we have approving the minutes of the special school board meeting of July 26th, 2018. Can I have a motion to approve these?
So moved.
Moved by Member Sandstead.
Seconded.
Seconded by Member Loeffler-Kemp. Any additions, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes of July 26th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have school and community recognition. Let's see. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's on.
Members of the board, this month we are recognizing a community partnership that brings energy to our Duluth community and opportunity to children and families in Gary, New Duluth. Joining us this evening are members of the G&D Development Alliance. Here with us today are Principal Nathan Glockley, Fran Morris, and Mark Bobin. Other representatives that were not able to make it today are Gary Bubalo, Frank Bruscar, Robert Espenson, Kristen Holler, Dale Lewis, Ped Pavlich, Jack Rendulich, Ryan Sather, and Mary White. The new Gary, New Duluth neighborhoods are located in the far west portion of Duluth. More than 3,000 people live in the community, which is served by Stowe Elementary School. The G&D Development Alliance is a group of citizens working to revitalize and transform the Gary, New Duluth recreation area. They raise funds and build partnerships with businesses and organizations to make capital improvements and operate the facility. Their efforts have resulted in soccer fields, picnic areas, a dog park, and other places for children, family, and citizens to gather and enjoy. The Alliance looks for and secures outside support, such as a $50,000 grant from the Minnesota Vikings and U.S. Bank Stadium. The grant is helping fund a multi-purpose court with basketball and pickleball, a community garden, and skate park. The Alliance helps organize summer youth program opportunities, community events, volunteer opportunities, and more. Their amazing work and their partnerships with Stowe Elementary are enhancing opportunities for Duluth's children and building a strong Gary, New Duluth community. Thank you for all that you do. Mark, thank you for all you do, and thank you for saying a few words with us as well tonight.
Thank you so much. This has definitely been a team effort, not only of our board, the school district, the community at large, the business sector in Duluth, the unions, foundations, and of course the city have all contributed greatly to our success. We have a real opportunity to not only build physical amenities at the site, but to build the social fabric of our community. And it starts with our children. We're fortunate to be right adjacent to Stowe Elementary School. It's a school that I went to. It's a school that Fran Morris went to many years ago. Of course not, and Bill Gronseth. Of course not the new school that's there today, but the older Harriet Beecher Stowe. So we have very strong ties to the community, and we're very proud of the work that's being done. But even more proud of what we're seeing with our children and our adults and our seniors that are enjoying the brand new G&D rec. The sport court is functioning. We have 4 basketball goals that are up and running, and kids are playing there. Kids of all ages, little elementary kids, high school kids, boys and girls are playing, and adults are coming there. Tomorrow, we're getting the dirt for the community garden. The garden is built. We've got 14 raised beds. Stowe Elementary School will be utilizing some of their beds for the children there to grow fruits and vegetables, and we'll be filling those beds up. Additionally, we started today in our rain gardens planting 2 very large way stations for monarch butterflies and pollinators. So it's going to be milkweed, it's going to be native plants and grasses and the like there. So it'll give Principal Glockley a real opportunity to promote Stowe as an element or as an environmental school and really have an outdoor learning opportunity right on the site. So again, thank you so much for this recognition. It belongs to the community at large, and all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have our community participation, audience participation. And the first speaker listed is Henry Banks. Welcome, Mr. Banks. Just over there. There's that, yeah. Microphone.
So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm just going to get right into this. And say understanding and awareness about African heritage, history, and culture in the United States of America is necessary and essential in order to build and sustain healthy and realistic cultural and educational conversations about race and racism in America. High school students and chaperones, I am just kind of giving a little bit of information here. I am planning a trip to Montgomery, Alabama for high school students in Duluth Public Schools, Superior Public Schools, and St. Paul Public Schools. I should tell you that it's my understanding that the bus is full right now. I'm here to come to the school board to get your blessing, if you will, on the trip, get support for the trip financially, possibly. I'm out there raising a ton of money already. Some of the organizations that are helping to fund this include Men as Peacemakers, the Lions Club have committed to give a ton of money, Peace United Church of Christ, And there are several others, individuals and organizations that are yet to send in funding. The reason that this trip to Montgomery, Alabama is important, most recently the National Memorial for Peace and Justice opened in Montgomery, and it is on the site of, if you will, a former slave auction site. And so the history that is a part of this experience will benefit our children like, I believe, like never before. Especially our African heritage kids and other kids of color who, for all intents and purposes, have never gone on a trip like this and experienced real history as it applies to our culture. For example, here in Duluth, the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial, as you probably know, was the first major memorial to lynching victims in the United States. Our memorial is 15 years old. Other memorials that are being built today utilize this memorial as the model for how they do their work, including the National Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. The trip is important for African heritage students because they need to have a connection with the local memorial here in Duluth, like nobody else. Because if we don't know our history, it's bound to repeat itself, especially with regard to lynchings and mass incarceration today, slavery, et cetera, et cetera. I find this to be an opportunity for the school district and for the kids that are in the school district to learn and come back and share that information with their peers. I know I'm out of time here, but there are approximately 8 or 9 different sites that the kids and the chaperones would be visiting while in Montgomery, Alabama, including a historically black college, Alabama State University. And so I'm hoping to get your blessing. I will send more information through email, and it's an exciting time and an opportunity for the school district to step up a little bit with regard to our kids. Thank you, especially our kids of African heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Bernie Burnham.
Good evening. I hope that you've been enjoying summer. I know I am, and I know we still have a little bit of time left. I just wanted to come and say hi, and next week we come back to school. Our folks are back in workshop next week, and I just want to share with you, yesterday I was with a group of younger educators. Our early educator career group has rejoined this again this year, and they brought some new folks in. We had 20 early career educators in the room yesterday, excited about what their work is going to be as union leaders in the future, so that's kind of fun. And their big talk is about positivity in the district and trying to promote the good things that are happening, so I'm excited about that group. I know that while we are starting next week, a lot of our folks have already been into the classroom, as you know, setting up and getting ready for the school year. So one of the reasons I'm here tonight is I know we have a referendum coming up, and we are wanting to support that, of course. I know there's also a proposal or an amendment going to be proposed tonight about changing that third question. So what I want you to know first and foremost is that we have a 3-year, we have 3 more years in our contract. And so any change that comes to that is going to have to be brought in front of our membership. So just want us to be thinking about that we already have an agreement, and any change to the day is going to have to come in front of our folks. And just want to be aware of that. I think the piece about the technology that's really important for us is that we know that a lot of our technology, we use it beyond its capacity often. We have things that we know that are beginning to time out. We're starting to transition from smart boards into newer types of technology. We have computer labs that are beginning to fail, and many of them have computers that aren't working anymore. So for classroom teachers and for our students, it's important that we continue to support our technology. It is the way of our world, and it is the way our students are learning, and we as adults learn. So I think it's important that we keep that as our third question. I'd really appreciate that if you would do so. So we will see you often as the months continue now and we're back into school, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Next is Catherine Akbar.
Good evening to all of you.
I woke up early in Winnipeg this morning and raced here so that I could just have 3 minutes of your time. So I appreciate you being here, and thank you. If you haven't gone to see the Human Rights Museum in Winnipeg, wow, it just opened 2014. So I'm speaking about technology. I know that with the levy language, the hope is for us to, of course, have more opportunities for students to learn, and I think we all want that. I think technology is a huge need in our classrooms, and this will be the 8th year that East has been open, and the smart boards are starting to flicker on and off. If I lose the ability to stream with the internet and to show students clips and to use that equipment, I don't know what I would do. It's completely changed from the time when I started teaching, and it was overheads. So I actually am a little fearful that we are not going to be able to upgrade our technology. Our 9th and 11th grade social studies classes adopted technology Chromebooks instead of textbooks. And our students, opening a textbook is one of the last things that many of them want to do. And I can attest to my children driving back from Vancouver, we're all loaded up with technology to get them through those 7 hours. The Chromebooks were starting to flicker on and off a year ago, and we had to adopt only 20 of the 40 in the cart that I have in my classroom. And I was concerned, oh no, only 20. So students pair up to use those computers. I think adopting a technology request is something that we can all understand, and it's something that we realize has to be updated, at least on a 5-6 year cycle. And I still have students that will say things to me like, Ms. Knackbar, I don't know how to use the computer. I'm not really good with technology. And that concerns me. That's a huge gap for our students. And we have many students in our area that I think need to be exposed to our technology at school. And I would also request that we put money in there and earmark it for professional development. I don't want to just go to my students and children. I want to be able to show two awesome uses with technology. So I hope, third, that we can show accountability to the public and what we have brought back for the technology and how it's benefiting our classrooms. Thank you so much for your time. Now I'm going to go take a nap.
Thank you. Beth McCuskey.
Hello, my name is Beth McCuskey. I'm a teacher at Ordine Middle School. I'm also a community member that supports public schools. I don't have it down, but I'm pretty sure I worked on at least the last 4 levies in this for our public schools. I'm going to be supporting this one as well. I wear a few hats. I have a labor hat, a mother hat, a community member, and a teacher. And what I'm asking you as school board members, when you think about the levy, you have to think about all of us that wear those different hats. And the language sometimes can get wonky. And so as you're thinking about that, that's what my request is. It's like there will be people that will be for it, but they want to understand it. They want the transparency. They want to know what the levy is really going to be used for. And then those people that are against it will use that language against us because that's just the way it goes. So if we can make it simple, and as a strong union advocate, unionism is for everybody, not just a little special group, and so our levy should be for the most children and the most that can be used for the public schools. So that's my request, is as you put things together for that you think of the big umbrella that we're all for, make it simple, make it understandable so that we can push it forward in a positive way and we don't have to be trying to get nuance with the language. And know that you'll be seeing me, I'll be door knocking, I'll be calling, I'll be doing all this stuff. Yeah, because I really do like Duluth and our schools are awesome. And thank you for being school board members because it's hard and I do appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Jones is next.
Hi, my name is Greg Jones. I teach at East High School. I am also here talking about the levy, and although I think the increased opportunities for middle and high school students is really important. I'm not sure that as a committee member who sat on that group trying to come up with our best schedules, I don't know that we're ready yet to move forward. I don't want to wait too much longer, but so I want to continue our focus on that. I do think that when we got rid of the 7-period day in the middle school and when we got rid of the 7-period day in the high school, that was supposed to be a temporary fix for some financial issues. However, it's feeling a little bit more like a permanent fix for some financial issues, and so I don't want to lose focus on that. However, I'm not sure that on the levy the way that it is, this year's levy is the right place for that. That's my concern. I really appreciate that our second question, at least on in the information that I saw, has to do with class size, because I still think that that is one of our biggest issues in our district and one that is most apparent to our parents in the community. I also think it's easy for our community to understand a smaller class size is oftentimes a better way to make personal relationships with our students and make sure that our schools are welcoming, positive places for them. And as Catherine initially said, about our technology, and she sat down and she said, I forgot to talk about how much we have to share our technology. So I will take this opportunity to say, we have these Chrome carts. We are sharing them constantly. They're in constant use. We use them for assessments. We use them for district assessments as well as state assessments. And there is a certain amount of technology that needs to continue to be maintained in order for us to comply for certain state requirements. And so my concern is maybe that the secondary schedule is, although important, a little less important than continuing to update technology in our district. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Next is Lynn Cuno.
Hi.
Welcome.
First, I want to thank Bill Gronseth for taking what I said last time I was here about taking us down to one monitor inside and one monitor outside, for coming to agreement with Mr. Glockley, and you guys came up with a solution. I very much do appreciate that you took the kids' safety and my voice as a community member and an employee into consideration. Second is, when people started running for school board, they say things, they do things, and I remember people saying, they want to make it equality, they want to make it fair across the board, they want to make sure every single voice is being heard, they want to make sure that everybody's being treated the same. Well, they had an opportunity to, bring equality, to make sure they're hearing our voice, and our raise gets denied. Someone said, no, it was 3-3. Someone should have said it, yeah, I think we should do that, because after all, that's what she kind of said on her campaign, that she was going to be equality. She wanted to be a voice for the lower paying employees, and she wants to do all this stuff, but I guess we go back into the invisible wall when people say things, but then they don't follow through. Personally, for me, I'm sick of being invisible. I'm sick of every year you guys talk about a raise, but we never get it. I'm sick of you guys always saying, yeah, we're a team, we're all a team, we're in this together, but your actions and the fact that you can't even give us a 1% raise? I mean, how do you think that makes me feel? I'm a hard worker. I show up every day to work. I have 8 kids, even if a kid is sick. I have my husband stay and watch him because I'm a dedicated worker. I want to be there. I want to change kids' life. The only reason I'm coming back every year after every year because I was really just down and I was upset, and someone once said to me, he pulled me aside, he's like, Lynn, you have the most important job. And I'm like, well, how's that? He's like, you don't interact with one kid, you interact with all kids. So why bring somebody else in to fix all these behaviors or whatever? Why don't you guys give monitors raises and give them training? Start with the little people. Maybe the little people can help it grow into something better instead of saying what you're going to do when you get on the board and then letting us down.
Thank you. Next is Lauren Martell.
Good evening. Thanks for a few minutes. First, I want to thank the board members who voted to keep the decision over tax money within the public's purview. It was the right decision not only because it showed the public some due respect, but it was also the best choice strategically. Robbing the public of its right to vote may have cut right through the noise of this election and left you with just the base levy and having already used both taxing authorities. I also want to point out that the 36 I mentioned last month was the number of districts that had done exactly what you were trying to do, convert money previously voter approved to board approved. 158 districts had used the authority, but most used it to create new revenue. The third point I want to raise is in regard to the $424 taxing authority. 5 years ago, in all the promo for the levy, the claim was made that it was, quote, put in place by the state. That was inaccurate. The board took the action necessary to implement that authority 5 years ago this month. But even now that it is no longer requires a resolution and has been moved to the certification, using the authority remains a local decision. I'm sure you're aware that you can use none of it, part of it, or all of it when you certify the levy. Put in place by the state more than implies, it declares that the state came in here, superseded your authority, and implemented that tax. And I'm asking you not to use that language again. It was inaccurate 5 years ago and would still be inaccurate today. The last item I want to mention is in regard to the levy. I don't understand how everything that was put in place with 2 tiers of the levy 5 years ago is all going to be folded into and maintained in just the first tier, the base levy now. My notes from 5 years ago show that out of the 1.8 million of the second tier, 1.45 million went to pay for a net gain of 16 teachers, and 0.35 million went into curriculum and efforts to close the achievement gap. How is that all folded into the base levy now, allowing you to put a new tier in place to hire 25 more teachers? The base levy is the same amount as it was 5 years ago, $795.78, but actually represents less money because of lower enrollment. Maybe I have some numbers wrong, or I'm missing something. I honestly just don't understand this. But the numbers just don't click into place for me, and I'm asking you to clarify this on the record so that I can understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mary Owen. Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'm here to talk about this process that we're going through right now with these 3 levies. 8 days ago, the community, thank you for the newspaper article, finally heard about the 3 proposals of the 3 levies going forward. And what I really have a hard time with, again, is this process, that it's coming around this fast. 8 days ago, and now all of a sudden it's going to be on the ballot. Number 3 in particular is the one I'm concerned about. So when I asked a board member about this, she pointed to the district survey as backup for the for reason number 3. And so I looked at the survey, and on there I see of all the problems that are listed in this district, of all the critical areas of need, not once did I see anything about disparities, or not once did I see even anything mentioned about people of color. So my question is, who wrote the questions? And someone answered that. This is the survey group. And then who approved those questions without any questions addressing these disparities? How many times do we have to get up here and talk about African American graduation rate of 37%, and there's no language in this survey to talk about that or to have that addressed. And there's no language anywhere in these proposals to address, or in the survey even, to address how we're going to take care of those disparities. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with this entire process. I also regarding this third levy proposal, this idea that technology is going to somehow change these disparities, I'd like to see the evidence. Now, I heard from a board member that there's moderate evidence. Why are we even considering moderate evidence for something so costly, that, and without evidence, without knowing that it is going to change these disparities? How many years are we going to have these disparities and again pass a levy that has moderate evidence to help our groups? Now, we've heard from East teachers, and I respect some of these East teachers. Thank you, Ms. Akbar. But where are our West teachers? Where are the teachers who are teaching my people? Why are they not up here? Do they really believe that this technology is the answer? I don't know. But I'd like to hear from them. And I'd like to see stronger than moderate evidence behind something that is going to cost this community lots of money and does not specifically address the disparities in my community. So I'm really disappointed in this process. I thought that we were moving forward. I'm happy with our new board, but I really think that this that you could have done a little bit better work on this process. Miigwech.
Thank you. Next is Betty Green.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Betty Green. I encourage that equity considerations be kept top of mind in levy decisions, in particular in how the funds are used. This is one of many opportunities the school district has to address the gaps in both achievement and graduation rates. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other people signed up. Would you like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Kevin Square Brown. I'm here speaking on my own behalf. Haven't had the opportunity to create a consensus with the folks that I've been working with. And I think that's part of what I want to recognize, and I heard other speakers recognize it, is that I really appreciate the article that came on August 13th from the DNT, sort of outlining 3 questions. It gave me I think, a fairly clear overview of where we're at in terms of what we're looking at. And that process troubles me. I know that work happened through the summer. I'm concerned. I watched the business committee meeting. I wasn't here with you, but I watched it last night. And I told that communities were consulted. I heard about the chamber. I believe that I heard that the chair of the NAACP was consulted. Had a conversation with him today. I think the consultation could have been deeper. I think the conversations could have been much richer in terms of looking at what are the priorities and then how do they impact our communities that are suffering the greatest with regards to educational equity. Fundamentally, I don't know what the best choice is. And from listening to the business committee meeting, I would say as a group, you're still struggling to figure that out, which again reinforces for me the notion of timing. I heard someone say, we're on track, the timing's just right, but I think if we're to make decisions as a community, I would disagree with that. I'm curious about the equity tool and how that might have been used or not used to evaluate the various proposals and what their impacts would be on communities of color, communities in poverty, communities most impacted by educational inequities. If that happened, I missed it. What would it have been like if we had gathered as a community to do that assessment together, to have the discussion, parts of the discussion that you had in your committee meeting in terms of maybe there's other factors like what kind of levies pass well, what kind of levies are easiest to pass in issues. If that needs to be part of the discussion, then that's part of the discussion the community needs to be brought into. And so echoing what I think we've just heard, I think we missed an opportunity to do an important decision in a way that was more inclusive. I'm also really conscious of the secondary school schedule committee has been working for a considerable length of time. I heard about it in Think Kids. And I'm left wondering if we can't put that into place through a levy process like we're going to do this November, if and when it'll ever happen. It sounds like that takes a considerable amount of investment. We are looking at 3 10-year levies. I am absolutely hoping all 3 of those pass. And I'm not sure if as a community, how soon we're ready to come back to the community and ask for additional money then to change the secondary schedule. So I worry that like telepresence, it's an idea, a promise, but we're not really we're not really willing to do what it takes to fulfill that. So good luck tonight in your deliberations.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, we will go on to our next agenda. Thank you for all of the speakers and what they had to say. We do listen to those. Next is readings, communications. Superintendent?
There are no formal communications to report.
Next then is the report of the superintendent.
Thank you. Well, as I'm sure everyone is very aware, the beginning of school is right around the corner, about 2 weeks away. Staff comes back next week for our big back-to-school training, and we're looking forward to that. The first day of class, everyone, is Tuesday, September 4th. If you haven't enrolled your children for school yet, please do so. A reminder to friends and neighbors and families you know with young kids, just check in with them, make sure they're enrolled for school. It helps us tremendously to know how many kids we're going to have in every school and in every classroom to be able to address class sizes across the district. I will say that every year we have 50 to 100 kids that sign up that last week right before school, and it's really helpful if we can do that a little bit earlier. So thank you for checking in on that. You can check our website to enroll, or you can stop by your neighborhood school and staff will help you enroll there as well. We do update our systems every day. We are watching class sizes closely. We know we have a few schools where class sizes are higher than we want, and we're working with school staff to decide how to best address those, and we hope to be making decisions on that by week's end in most cases. Earlier today, I, along with several other superintendents and educational leaders from across the state and the Department of Education, were at the Senate testifying before the E12 Policy Committee regarding the new special education funding formula. The funding formula has negatively affected Duluth at a higher rate than anywhere else in the state. And that is coming right from Paul Farron, who's the special education funding specialist at MDE. It's all because of when the base was set for special education funding. It was set in FY16. That happened to be a year that was notably lower. There were higher tuition adjustments for us that year, so our revenues were lower. The base was then set lower, to the tune of $1.2 million lower than we had the year before. That then set the floor for all years following. So each year we get a 4.6% increase. However, we started 1.2 million lower than we should have. The state recognizes this, MDE recognizes this, and we will continue to work closely with our local legislators and legislators on the E12 Policy Committee as well as the Education Finance Committee to try to advocate for change, but also to advocate for that to be retroactive for Duluth so that we can regain some of the reserves that we lost when this was implemented. And we have a lot of people working side by side with us, a lot of community partners, and we're very glad to have them working alongside of us. I did tweet and post on Facebook some pictures of me and some other superintendents down at the Capitol, and I'm glad to have their support as well. That being said, I know that from being in our schools, staff are already busy, as I always was as a teacher too. I can't wait to get in and start setting up the class. There's nothing like a fresh new year, and if no one has said it yet, Happy New Year. So, let's hear from our students who are anxiously awaiting the beginning of school. Shall we start with Maggie today from Denfeld, and Representative Carlos?
Okay. So it is August, so everyone's kind of winding down from summer, getting their last bits to the beach and shopping, all their stuff for the year. But Link Crew is getting into action next week with their Link Leader training, so preparing for freshman orientation on the 30th, which we're super excited to see all of the new hunters. And then the day before that, on August 29th, is our open house barbecue, and then you guys are all invited to be there. And our athletes have been working really hard to start off their season strong, like I know tennis has. And then we also have our first match this Thursday, but it's out of town, so I know you all will be there in spirit. And then, yeah, so summer's just coming to an end for all of us, but I am a little excited to go back and see all the faces that I've been missing.
Representative White from East High School.
All right. So over at East, August is a busy month full of preparations for the start of the school year and the kickoff of fall sports. August 13th was the official first day of fall sports, and on the 16th, fall sports athletes met for the Greyhound Nation meeting, where they learned about what it means to be an athlete for Duluth East and what is expected for them throughout the season. Last night, the boys soccer team defeated Maple Grove in a scrimmage 4-0 and are looking to have similar results this weekend versus Andover. And then the girls soccer team have the first game of the season this Friday versus Rosemont at East at 2 o'clock. And then tomorrow is Jumpstart, where students will show up to East to turn in paperwork, get their lockers, receive their schedules, and overall make sure they're starting the year off on the right foot. And then our freshman orientation is on the 29th. The freshmen will be introduced to East and have a chance to meet their Hound Pack leaders and bond with other students. Throughout the month of August, the Hound Pack leaders have had several training days where they have worked on their leadership skills and worked on ways to make the transition into high school as easy as possible for the freshmen. And then on the 29th, there will be an open house and club fair, and the many clubs at East will be on display, and they'll have a chance to recruit students before the school year officially starts, which is right around the corner, so they're eager to get out there. And that is what I have for this month.
Thank you. And that completes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, everybody. All right, next we'll head off into our report of the standing committees, and we will start off with the Education Committee. Member Lofall.
Thank you, Chair Kirby. And as my team gets up, I just want to congratulate Finn and Maggie on being seniors and starting their senior year. There's always something magical and energetic and, just embracing. So good luck as you start that off. And it'll be fun. So I'm going to really breeze through the Educational Committee report quickly so that we can get down to, I know, some of the issues that we want to have some good conversation on. And plus it was the month of early August and we didn't have a lot of our presentations coming before us. So here we go with our Education Committee. Please chime in if you think that there's something we really needed to share. So again, I invite all of us to attend our Education Committee meetings. They're always the second Tuesday of the month at 4:15, or watch them on YouTube. That's a way to be involved as well. So we started out with informational items, and we had reports from our Assistant Superintendent Horton, who just shared with us his visits and his delight at our Key Zone, and Representatives Murphy and Larson going there to celebrate, and also, students helping students in our Key Zone program. He highlighted also a school safety update, and that might be something that our community is interested in making sure they understand that, and I think there's been some newspaper articles on it, and we've gotten some communication from parents that they're glad we're moving forward with our school safety grant and our ALICE training, and a possible grant with the Duluth Police Department and the Duluth Public Schools called COPS, C-O-P-S. And have we heard anything on those? Okay, well, yeah, the state one isn't due till August 29th, which is, next week, okay. And again, just celebrating our Duluth Community Schools Collaborative. We had a summer musical called Robin's Hood, and they had a fundraiser as well. He's assistant superintendent is continuing his one-on-one meetings. He's got a lot of staff and people to meet, so thank you for reaching out to us. It's all in those relationships, so I encourage all of us to continue making relationships, attending things that they invite us to, and try to show there as well. And I think even the GNC is celebrating something this week, and I was going to try to ask Fran about that. But there is some celebration of the basketball courts and the community gardens, and so I'll try to get that information out to my colleagues as well. We heard from our curriculum director, Gail Netland, and she also just highlighted some things that she's doing. She has been planning our new teacher orientation, and we have a full day of staff development at Denfeld on August 27th, and also a keynote speaker. And again, that's where we're going to roll out our safety plan and have a message from Chief Tuscan concerning school safety as well. So that will be exciting, and I think some of us board members would try to be there as well. We're invited. She also updated us on the curriculum process regarding the English language arts text selection, and we did some policy reviews of extracurricular and co-curricular language. And that was our informational items from our leadership. Our committee then went on to just reviewing, or we had an informational presentation from our Youth in Action, and that's a program in Duluth, that's also partnering with our full community service schools and also at East High School. And we look forward to more opportunities for our students involved in Youth in Action. It was just recommended that the Duluth School Board receive that presentation as informational. We have 3 grants that were also recommended as, accepting the information on it. The 3 grants, one was from the Northland Foundation for a first-year program. Jennifer Jaros of Early Childhood is going for a $5,000 grant. It's recommended that we receive this as informational. We have a grant also from Jay Rossler, our Community Education Director, and ECFE Director for a pre-K transition and alignment grant. And we have a 3rd grant from the Northland Foundation again for Child Care Mentoring Program, Jennifer Jaros again, and that's recommended as informational. We then went on to our policies, and we looked at our extracurricular and co-curricular, and that was the first reading, so we'll revisit that again this coming September. And that leads us to a resolution that I will read for you, that is acceptance of grants. So it's Resolution E-8-18-3577, whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires a school district to accept grants by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full. And whereas acceptance of the grant in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools, now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described grant from said organization in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to these organizations. And so it is the Northland Foundation grant and grants from the Minnesota Department of Education. And I would recommend that the Duluth School Board approve that grant.
Second. So it's been moved by Member Lofall, seconded by Member Leffler-Kemp to pass Resolution E-8-18-3577. Is there any discussion? Member Trinka.
Thank you. So if I remember correctly, on the initial committee packet for the Education Committee, we also had a grant for $5,000 from the Northland Foundation for a co-teaching position for Pathways to Teaching. And I'm wondering what happened, why that got pulled off.
Maybe we could deal with this resolution first, and then you can ask that later.
Sure. I just don't want it to get lost.
Okay.
Point of order.
Sure. Go ahead. Member Sansit?
I think if Member Trinka is concerned about whether or not we're losing that grant, it would have to be included in this resolution accepting other grants.
Was it with this grant or was it with the other grant? Maybe.
Well, it's not. It's not in here, but it is.
That's all one.
It's all one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then, if it's included, go ahead then, Member Trinka.
Okay, so from my understanding and speaking with Allison Wood around this, that it would help to pay for her and another teacher, Ed Lewis, for part-time for them to teach a Pathways to Teaching class, which is a program that we really strongly support at the district as a way to reduce the achievement gap. I know that there is a discrepancy in what the total cost would be, and so we've got about half the money that's lined up already. In subsequent conversations, Allison and I have talked about identifying additional community partners who might be able to make up that gap, including the Northland Foundation and the College of St. Scholastica, who's already indicated some interest in supporting that. And so I don't want us to turn that money down. If it's a matter of finding those additional $5,000, I think we've got a pretty solid plan in place. And so I'm not sure what the process is here, but wanting to have that remain on here until we've fully identified that we can't fund the position.
Go ahead. Oh. There you go.
So, yes, Ms. Woods did approach us with the grant and initially did have that on there. It was a $5,000 grant to fund a course which is previously funded, so we currently are running the section. Her request was to co-teach the class, which was not something we had allocated FTE for. The grant would cover $5,000, which would allow her to co-teach the one class. However, we did need to fund the rest of that section, which would be an additional $5,000-ish. In addition to that, there's no funding in place for a second semester at this time. Allison was very hopeful that she could secure funding through another grant, but we would not find that information out until October. So currently we're short really about $15,000-ish was what it would end up being. At this current time, I did speak with our union leadership about this. I did talk with our principal leadership about this. Allison and I had numerous conversations. I really appreciated her passion around this course and what she wanted to do with it. When we take a look at class sizes across our district and take a look at are we going to be co-teaching a section versus taking some of those funds and moving them towards reducing class sizes in other areas of need where we have class sizes in the mid-30s or potentially higher, we do have to kind of weigh all those different factors. And so Allison did come up with a very creative option, which she did propose to us, and I did talk to the principal, and I did talk to our union leadership, and so we're kind of working through those details right now to see what we can do. We have not lost the grant. I have just set it to the side right now. It did not appear here on the final agenda, but we're hopeful that if there are some other opportunities, a way we could fund that, we're definitely not against that, but we definitely need to be thoughtful in how we make that decision, since it is a class that already does have a teacher. So it's while I appreciate her passion, there's some other logistical pieces too in terms of scheduling, and Principal Sconiers has done a great job of working creatively on how we might accommodate that, which would move other sections around, and she would know more details on that. I'd have to engage her to get those specifics, but that's kind of where it stands right now. So it's definitely not a forgotten, but it's kind of off to the side for right now. And I told them if we come up with a resolution that I would then bring that grant forward for approval.
Member Sandsted.
Just a preliminary question. Does the grant have a deadline for acceptance?
I would have to look into that. I don't have an answer for that right now.
Okay. What happens if the deadline is next week?
In that case, if we couldn't come up with a resolution beforehand, then we probably would end up not having that because it wouldn't be board approved. But I don't know that. I can only speculate.
That seems like important information for us to have in making a decision tonight in terms of whether or not to move forward with this or to let it go for another month. The Pathways to Teaching is a really important program that I think we've touted as a district, and it's certainly one of the fundamental elements that we're focused on in terms of equity. And I'm delighted to see the numbers that are interested at Denfeld to participate in this course. And anything we can do to enhance and further support the pathway to get more students of color into teaching locally is certainly something that I would greatly support as a board member. I know that we had some back and forth about this grant, and I don't know that I had the full picture on the circumstances. So I don't know, Member Trinka, if you're proposing to make a motion to include the grant in this this resolution, or how we wrap this up for this evening with the information we have at hand, I guess.
Is it likely that the grant deadline will be next week?
I don't know of I don't know of any deadline to accept that. So not that I'm aware of, not that I've come across. I would need to go back and check that to give you a firm answer. One thing I think that to think about is the impact this would have on second semester if we don't receive that other grant, which we wouldn't find out until October. And I think another thing to think about is if we're to co-teach a course like this, and I am 100% in support of doing the things you want to do, and in a perfect world I would be able just to say, yeah, let's do it. Unfortunately, we're tasked with that fiscal responsibility, and so thinking about if we do make a determination to accept this grant, not knowing how we're necessarily going to fund that in second semester, then what is the conversation we're going to have about other courses, whether it be at Denfield or East, with the college and the schools, and are we going to be co-teaching them in the future because we're now taking action to do this class and setting precedents to do this in future classes, and how are we going to financially do that moving forward. So just something to consider as we kind of move through this process and how this decision could play out and what we want to do and respond to that.
Member Lofold.
So just to clarify, is the class set to go on right now with one teacher, Allison Wood?
No, Allison is not teaching the class. Another teacher is teaching the section. Allison would like to co-teach that class. So the section will run. They had greater interest than was anticipated. And so I think they're getting advice from a trainer that they had out in Colorado. And I don't know the person that was, but they were suggesting that co-teaching might be a great way to do that the first year to help it be successful.
Sure. Member Trinka.
So according to, after the discussions around this, so just for reference, East has one teacher and they have 8 students enrolled. Denfeld has 2 trained teachers, and Tanya's here, so could speak much better to this than I could, but with 26 to 28 and maybe even closer to 30 students who are interested in this. And so, you know, again, as we continue to talk about the reduction in the achievement gap, wanting to support a program that we tout, and utilize the resources that we have available. I certainly understand that there are ramifications. There's a lot that's coming down the pike that we may or may not be able to see, but I guess my recommendation would be that we move to amend the resolution to include that funding for this point, contingent upon getting some additional information moving forward. But I would rather accept it so that we don't have to wait another month, because that's going to impact a lot of planning pieces as well.
So a motion has been made to amend the acceptance of awards to include what is the name of the grant? We're including that grant.
Member Trinka's got her light on.
I'll need a minute to go back and look to.
It wasn't our committee, our previous committee, but it's a grant for $5,000 from the Northland Foundation for Pathways to Teaching.
And it was seconded by Member Sandstead. Now, is there any discussion around this? Member Sandstead.
Yeah, I would just say I understand the financial concerns here. I think that we're talking a fairly small amount of money for a program that is unique. And so I'm not concerned about setting precedents with regard to other courses. I also think that given all of the life transitions that can happen, worst case scenario, having a co-taught course for first semester, having that taught by one teacher for the second semester wouldn't be the end of the world if it came to that. if we didn't receive any other support, which sounds like there's a good promise for. So it sounds to me like the staff is interested in co-teaching, and we have a significant number of students, and our student-to-teacher ratio is still going to be much higher at Denfeld than it will be at East. So I would support accepting this grant to allow for co-teaching of our Pathways program.
Member Oswald.
I'm going to vote in support of this, including this, because Pathways to Teaching is so important. My other comment that I have is that in the future, I would hope that if you remove something in between the committee and, or that you don't remove something from between the committee and the monthly meeting, is that you request to remove it at the monthly meeting instead, because this is just a good catch by some board members. And so we rely on only the information that's in front of us. So if you would like to remove it, you can request it to amend the agenda, and I think that would serve us all better in the future anyway. This $5,000 is such a tiny amount. I don't think you can make the argument that that $5,000 needs to go to a different school or anything like that. We're building a program, and to have 2 teachers experienced in teaching this program at Denfeld, where we want it to grow to be the only thing that a teacher can teach in 5 sections, that would be my hope. And to have 2 experienced teachers for a second year, that's well worth $5,000.
Member Gorham.
So did I understand the motion correctly? We're amending this resolution to accept these funds contingent upon receiving complementary funds, or are we just amending it to take the $5,000?
At this point, I believe it's just to take the $5,000, hoping that it will be renewed before, but if it isn't, it isn't.
Okay. I'm in support of this merely for the fact that Pathways to Teaching is such an important program. If there's high demand at Denfeld, and this was a recommended way to help get it off on a good foot, I think that's important to support, and I'm hopeful our community can rally it and find a way to keep it going.
Superintendent Grantz, you can speak first.
I just wanted to mention that I know Member Oswald said it shouldn't be taken off in between, but it wasn't on the Education Committee. Just wanted to point that out.
Member Lofald.
Well, that was my point as well. I've got our education reports from just last week, and it wasn't. So, but again, I don't want to deny a good program. But as a teacher, I also understand our need to really make sound choices as to, teaching a class of 26 to 28. Well, there's probably some classes higher with 1 teacher in it. These are seasoned teachers. These are some of the best teachers that we have lots of best teachers. So I'm confident that our teachers would be great. I like the comment about second semester might fly with 1 teacher, because after starting the program and getting going, maybe that second semester will stay strong with one teacher. But so again, let me get this straight, because again, it was not on last week's agenda. Otherwise, we would have had this conversation. Have we talked about Pathways to Teaching, and is it offered in our curriculum and our catalogs? Yes. So I'm really interested in where my fellow board members found out this information, because I would like to have come to tonight's meeting with just a little bit of background. Then I would have talked to my community, which this is my community, the Western community, and talked to the leadership and talked to the teachers, and maybe been able to at least support what we're all going. I just like coming with a little bit more information so we don't. So right now, Pathways to Teaching has 26 students registered at Denfeld High School. 29. We have 1 teacher. It's not Miss Woods or Mr. Lewis?
It's Mr. Lewis.
It's Mr. Lewis. Okay. And they would like to team teach it. We have enough money for 1 teacher. Mm-hmm. And this $5,000 grant was sought out by the Northland Foundation to have a second staff in that hour.
They were hopeful to piece multiple grants together to fund an extra section. Currently, they're able to secure $5,000 to fund half of one semester. They can't fund the full semester, and there is zero funding in place for second semester. The hope is that in October that they could secure additional funding to, it would be awarded in October, and then that would tell us whether or not there's funding for second semester or not.
So Principal Sconyers, can she come in and share with us? Sure. Is that okay by the board?
We'll make a special
exception. Because we'd like
exception.
to get this right.
Can you, Tanya, can you come up to the mic?
Good evening. Thank you. So for clarification, we have, as of the springtime, in preparation for Pathways to Teaching to happen in Duluth Public Schools, funded one section of Pathways to Teaching at both high schools. That was in the springtime. That is the case. We have a section at East. There's a section at Denfeld. 29 students signed up at Denfeld at this point. Ed Lewis was selected to teach. However, when we went to training for that class, we sent two teachers, Allison and Ed, because at the time, Ed had not been selected, and I wanted to build capacity in our building to make sure that, let's just say, Allison left or Ed left, we would have a teacher to teach Pathways to Teaching. So both of them were trained. Ed was selected to teach the section that will happen in 1819. Ed and Allison came to me to say they had applied, both of them that together had applied for a grant because they wanted to co-teach the class. Great. That's building capacity within our building. The class is slated to be taught by Ed. If we have additional funding from grant funders that you all as a board agree to, then we will have a co-teaching model. But we will, if we don't have the funding, what they have recommended and suggested is that right now we have enough for a quarter, like first quarter, because the first semester, 0.1 FTE costs $9,600. We have 5,000 of it, we need 4,600. Allison has suggested, because she's so passionate about bringing Pathways to Teaching here and building the capacity for and kids being involved, she has asked me as a principal, can she co-teach with Ed Lewis, knowing that first quarter, they have the funding? And if they don't have the funding second quarter, she would like to take a reduction in her FTE as a science teacher and continue to teach that course for second quarter. That is her decision. That's a staff member's decision whether they want to take a reduction in FTE, but her reasoning is she is so passionate about wanting to co-teach the class with Ed Lewis. I can answer any questions.
Member Leffler-Kemp, you haven't had a chance to talk.
Sure. Well, I certainly have always supported the Pathways to Teaching program and appreciated the presentations we've had on it. I too was trying to follow this discussion because I wasn't at the Education Committee, but I had watched it and I certainly had read my information and had not heard that there was this issue with the grant, and so I too would have appreciated that. My question for you, Tanya, is I'm concerned about is there union approval for this? Because I believe that comes into play when a teacher reduces their work.
No, my understanding is all the employees that I have worked with in Duluth Public Schools, if they have asked for a reduction, it's been a voluntary reduction.
Okay.
They send communication to Human Resources to request that reduction in FTE. It's usually a voluntary reduction, and they state it as such, and then it moves forward through HR. And I have staff members on staff right now who have asked for voluntary reductions in any number of disciplines.
So that process had already moved forward before we've approved the grant? I mean, I'm just trying to follow the process here, and I'm a little confused, that's all.
I will tell you it's a catch-22. She's waiting to see if the grant is approved, and we have had communications with the senior HR manager, Tim Swirsky, about Allison taking a reduction, a voluntary reduction for second quarter, I want to say semester, second quarter, and she was waiting to see if the the grant was approved, and could they get, if they receive additional funding of the $4,600, she will not take a reduction because her FTE would be compensated through a grant.
And then just my follow-up question. We're trying to find when this grant, if there's a date with this grant. And do you have that information, Tanya?
They are waiting. The last communication we received from the grant was they were waiting to disperse the funds after receiving the authorization that the grant had been accepted by the Duluth Public Schools. So they're waiting to authorize the funds if the school board accepts the grant.
Okay. And then we usually see the grant before we see the grant, so we're familiar with it, and so I'd appreciate that information at some point.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Member Oswald, I'm sorry.
I think the difference with the request for voluntary reduction is that she would actually still be working with the reduction. And I think that's where the question came in.
Member Oswald.
So if I'm understanding, first of all, I want to apologize, Mr. Horton. I didn't mean to assume you didn't. I assumed that you did something wrong, and I shouldn't do that. I didn't understand how this all came about. So my understanding now is that we approve this money, she gets to teach first quarter. Is that the sum of it?
Principal Sconiers has been working on the details of that, and so I guess I would ask her for clarification on that.
If we approve this money tonight, she gets to teach first quarter with Mr. Lewis. And I think that's a win-win. There's no reason not to accept it, so we can start off a school year right. The HR details can be worked out later. If she's willing to not be present in the room and teach for second quarter and take the reduction, I think there wouldn't be a problem. So.
I think to that point, I would like to interject. I did have, I've had 2 different conversations with our union leadership on this, and I did get some conflicting information with that. At first, it sounded like, according to Allison, that it would be okay to do the reduction, and I did have a subsequent conversation with both Bernie and Mike on this, and right now they think there could be some issues with the reduction, and they're not, I would say they're not in favor of it at this time in terms of doing the reduction. And so I think by accepting the grant and seeing what happens, there's potentially some negative fallout that could happen, and I think that we could get ourselves in a situation before we've really done all our research on that. So I think we might need to ask some more questions before we kind of make that step.
Sure.
I appreciate knowing that this isn't a finished conversation on your end. What I do know is if we can approve a grant tonight, you guys can figure that out, and if we end up not using it, we can return it. It's a done deal. Either way, that happens occasionally, and I would rather accept it now than have to wait until October or September 24th or whatever day after our next board meeting for her to start, if that's the way it goes. So I'm willing to approve it and leave it up to your team and all the parties involved to figure out how to make it work.
Member Gorham.
I just want to say I appreciate the effort, the hustle to pursue something like this. Clearly, there's a lot of passion involved. As a board member, I'm concerned about the process. This needed to be at Education Committee so we could have crucial conversations. I'm all in favor of supporting pathways to teaching, but not at the expense of putting our district in a compromised position with labor. And we need to have those conversations and understand those impacts before we make a decision as a board. That's my feeling. I'm disappointed it wasn't brought forward through the way we typically do. There's a reason we do a business a certain way, and it's to ensure we're making the best decisions.
Superintendent.
Just want to be a little more clear on why this wasn't on the agenda, and it's for all of the reasons that we're discussing right now about the lack of clarity. We weren't sure of what labor response was going to be to taking this off, and we weren't sure about the next funding pieces, and so we didn't feel that we had full enough information to bring it, and that is why it did not appear on the agenda after we had discussion as a team. I fully understand. You know, I'm so glad that there's passion around this. This is a course that we worked a long time to put into place and support, and I'm glad there's more kids in it. If we can do this, if all the details work out, that's great. We're happy to support it, but I also don't want to put us in a compromising position, and that's why it wasn't on the agenda.
Member Lofold?
So Superintendent Gronseth somewhat answered my question. I was kind of wondering why we wouldn't. So in actuality, I feel like there's a little bit of a tug between our leaders. I think that our administrators here are looking at all the details and making some cautious decisions. But we also have a leader of a high school that wants the best thing for that class and for her staff. They're both trained. And it's kind of a power struggle. And I feel like right now the board is kind of micromanaging. This is an issue between superintendent and assistant superintendent and Principal Sconiers. And I want Principal Sconiers to be able to run her program and know she's doing well. And so I feel like we've just kind of opened a can of worms here, and I'm just going to call it what it is. And it's hard for us as a board to decide which way to do it. They didn't bring it forward as a grant because they view it as a little bit more complex. And I think our high school's Pathways of Teaching might have reached out to some board members and allowed us to know that this grant wasn't moved forward. And so now we're involved in that conversation as well. And so that brings it a little bit to a board conversation. Mr. Gronseth is going to put his light on. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's a tug between two really passionate leaderships, and does the board get to make that ultimate decision when our administration leadership is somewhat in disagreement? Tanya, I feel, or what I mean wants to go ahead? Nope. Okay. Or not.
Okay. Superintendent?
Well, now that the discussion has been out there and all of the pieces we were cautious about have been, discussed here, you could accept the grant, and then if the details don't work out, we send it back, just like Member Oswald was saying. Had we worked out the details, we would have put it in place and brought the grant to you next month, and the payment would have just been, we would have known the money would be there. So that's where we are. If we have it now, that's fine. It's either way it works.
Mr. Horton, if we accept this grant now, the teaching can go forward starting September 4th? Oh, sorry.
Answer your question, but if I can back up just to the question about process a little bit. Principal Sconiers and I did have a conversation about that grant and what we wanted to do, and could we find district funds, and could we use building funds, and how could we try to make this work. And we really worked hard to try to see how can we support Allison in this, and can we come up with some funding. And a very big thing that I am a fan of, and we talked about this at our leadership meeting today, is team decision making. And so we partnered with a DFT on this. We partnered with Building Leadership, and it was together Office of Assistant Superintendent and Principal Sconyers saying that this was not a good idea to move forward with this funding. And so we had that conversation, and at building and district level, we said we can't make this work, and so therefore we're not going to approve that grant. And so that's why that happened the way that it did. And so that has to go with process. If we do approve funding, and again, I am all, if we can figure out a way to make it work, I am in support of co-teaching CIT class. I'd love to co-teach every class. We actually did that in our elementary schools through title program. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's expensive, but great. I would be concerned that if the other funding doesn't come through, that now we've asked a teacher, we've reassigned our sections, and now Allison teaches a class for a quarter, and now what? The union is not in favor of her taking a reduction, so now we're faced with a situation is, do we fund that or do we not fund that? And it creates a potential conflict there that I don't think that we've really determined. And I think that the process of bringing the grant forward to us, I think, was very last second. I think it was like, great, we got this funding, quick, let's do something. We got it, we need to get on the agenda. It was boom, boom, boom. And when we stopped and asked questions about that and slowed it down, then we started peeling back the layers of the different potential issues there are. I'm concerned for Allison in that if we do approve this grant and she does start teaching right away, then what happens to her? Do we give her a 1.0 and then we have to take a 0.05 section away from the other teacher that was doing that? And how is that fair to the other staff member that we're now taking that FTE away from? I'm a little concerned about that. So could she start teaching it? Yes. Are there potential unforeseen consequences that we haven't figured out? I think there are. And so I just think that we need to be kind of cautious and mindful of those pieces if we do decide to move forward with her actually going into that class.
If we don't approve it and the grant comes next month, can she then start doing it?
Yes, absolutely. And that has been the conversation with her, is that if we can figure this out, absolutely. But we want to get our ducks in a row first before we do that, before we put her in front of the class and do something like that. So we just want to make sure that we're responsible in that and we don't move ahead, get the cart in front of the horse.
So by not including this doesn't mean that she wouldn't do it for most of the year, for the rest of the year?
If we can if we could secure funding to make things work, I think that would be great. I think given the variety of factors from this course that is already funded with an FTE, in addition to the conversations about some of our other sites and the need for funding, there are funding conversations that we're having that are much more than even those pieces about how we're making things work, and we're working really hard to make sure that that's happening. But we just made a $1.9 million adjustment, and we did that without cutting any staff, which is amazing. And so that, I think that was great, but we're tight. And so I think we have to be very careful and cautious about making these decisions. The human side of me wants to say, let's just go ahead and do it, and just want to do that because I want to support her. The logical side of me says we need to make sure things are lined up appropriately before we go ahead and move forward. And so I'd caution us just to make sure we have everything figured out and not just see how it lands, because we could put Allison in a very unfortunate spot with that.
I'm optimistic we can find the funds at some time. Like, I'm optimistic we'll pass all 3 levies. So, all right.
I love your optimism.
Member Sandstead.
I am optimistic that you guys will be able to work out the details, and so I'm going to go ahead and support approving this tonight, and hopefully we can get it and use it and have this excellent course co-taught through at least 1 semester and maybe 2, but I'm confident you'll be able to work out the details.
Member Lefler-Kemp.
Yeah, I just want to clarify so that the public knows the class is going to happen. It's going to happen with Ed Lewis. And so the conversation isn't if it's not going to happen or not. It's just about, is there going to be a second teacher? Because I think it's kind of got muddied a little bit on that as well in this discussion. And I guess my only other comment is I appreciated Member Gorham's comments about process, and I'm kind of a process person too, and for me it's kind of new information because it wasn't, again, on the agenda. And so I want to make sure we as a board are following good process.
Finally, Member Oswald.
I think by approving this tonight, we're going to motivate people to find more money. rather than put it off another month and wait until we, can line up all the money. I think this can be a great motivator that we're halfway there for half a semester, and it'll help other people say, hey, there's more money here, more money there. It opens doors. So I'm voting for it.
Is there any other discussion? All right, we will vote on this amendment to include the Pathway to Teaching grant in the Resolution E183577, which, just to make everybody clear, will mean that if accepted, and we will have $5,000 for the co-teaching, which will last one semester?
A quarter.
A quarter. After that, it may mean that there is no co-teaching. Is that correct? Unless...
Yep, currently it's unfunded. Yes.
Currently unfunded. So we're voting for what we know for is a quarter of co-teaching. 1 quarter. Okay. Is anybody clear on that? And I think everybody. All right. Let's have a roll call vote on this. Member Sandstead.
All right.
Voting on that.
We're voting on the amendment now. Oh, for you.
Member Gorham. Member Kirby.
I will vote yes.
Member Loeffler Kemp.
No.
Member Lofold.
No.
Member Oswald.
Yes.
I am voting yes. Member Trinka.
Yes.
The vote is 4 yeses, 3 noes.
All right.
Chair.
So that amendment passes. Now we can, is there any further discussion on the first, or the overriding resolution E18, now amended, E8-1835-77? Any further discussion on this? All right. Excuse me. All in favor of accepting E8-1835-77 as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So that passes unanimously. All right. Member Lofold.
And then continuing with our Education Committee, we just have diploma requests for Michelle Ekdahl, Connor Edwards, Isis May, Peyton Cardinal, Zachary Erickson, Colin Steen, Grace Anderson. A round of applause for the graduates that graduated over our summer. That concludes the Education Committee meeting. I move that we accept it.
Motion has been made by Member Lofold, seconded by Member Sandstead, to accept the Education Committee report. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then this passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is the HR report. Member Gorham.
Thank you, team.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Human Resources Committee report. The meeting took place Monday, August 13th. We meet every second Monday at 4:15 right here in this room. All meetings are recorded and available on YouTube. First item we had on our agenda was the monthly staffing report. A couple things to mention there. Just one, that the CFO position has been posted. It will remain up until the position is filled. I know that interviews are coming up soon, and there will be an interview committee with diverse representation. Also of note, I plan to pull this item and so that I may abstain from voting on it due to the inclusion of a family member on the report. Moving on to action items. Number one would be up for approval of Education Minnesota Clerical Bargaining Unit Local 692A. So it's just some modifications of note to the contract. I'll discuss a few, but not all. This contract would be for two-year contracts with increases of 0% for the first year, 1.5%, 2%, and 2%, becoming effective July 1st, 2017, and good through June 30th, 2020. There were some modifications to the grievance process, as well as arbitration language, to more closely match and mirror what is in the teacher contract. Some modifications were made to vacation. three-tier schedule for 38 to 49 weeks, so those who are working 38 to 49 weeks in a year, and then some added vacation for those who work anywhere from 50 to 52 weeks. Job titles impacted by this contract include office support specialist, intermediate senior, and/or executive assistant. Just as a general comment, we've heard several comments from the public, whether it be here at a board setting, via email, from peers of this bargaining unit, a lot of teachers, principals, talking about how these individuals are the face of our school. It's the first person you see when you walk in. Typically, it's the person who knows everything about the goings-on of a school, and just even when we were having our security conversations, a lot of talk about how vital these staff are and how much they do. So I just want to acknowledge that and recognize them as we move forward. Moving on here, I'm going to pull up the resolution and I'll read it. So we have, as it loads, Resolution HR 818-3578. Education Minnesota Clerical Local 692A. Resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, that the collective bargaining agreement between Independent School District Number 709 and the Education Minnesota Clerical Local 692A, a summary of which has been provided electronically to all school board members, be approved and adopted for the period of July 1, 2017 to June 30, 2020, inclusive, and that the chairperson and clerk of the school board be hereby authorized to execute said agreement on behalf of the school district. I move Resolution HR 818-3578.
Second. Seconded by Member Leffler-Kemp. Any discussion? Mr. Swirsky, thank you.
I just want to apologize for this in that resolution. That June 30th date should be 2021. I'm sorry I missed that.
Member Trinka.
Just a couple quick questions. I know I asked you one last week. These updated kind of total salaries, are they included in the budget that we're discussing tonight? Your other one's on too.
Oh, there we go. Yes, they are. And then I did, hopefully the board members, I did send out a cost out this week of the increases. And knowing what the board parameters are, that's what has been used in right now for the setting those budgets for salary increases. So.
Okay, thank you. And how many total employees will this impact? Just a rough estimate.
Yeah, it's in the 50s, about 54, 57 individuals.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Sandsted?
I wanted to say thank you for the work on this. I know this one took some time, but I was able to see the clerical staff at Lowell today. They were there, ready to go, ready to welcome all the parents there for kinder camp. So I appreciate that this is resolved and that we're able to move forward with them.
Rillofold? Oh, okay. Any other discussion? All right, it's been made and seconded to accept or to pass Resolution HR 818-3578. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Then this passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right, and we have another resolution for employment of a school board member by the district, just annual business we need to do. I'll get started with the resolution. Whereas the school board members below are or will be employed by the Duluth Public Schools during their service as a school board member, and whereas Minnesota Statute 123B.195, board members' right to employment requires that the member receive a majority approval by the school board to be initially employed or to continue in employment at a meeting at which all board members are present, and whereas Minnesota Statute 123B.195, board members' right to employment states that the employment relationship will not exceed $8,000 in a fiscal year, excluding compensation for being a school board member. Be it resolved that the school board authorize the employment of the following school board members as listed, not to exceed $8,000 in a fiscal year. Member Lowfold, Member Oswald.
Second.
I move Resolution HR 818-3580.
Thank you. Seconded by Member Sandsted. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor then of, I don't have the number here in front of me, of this resolution, HR 7-18-3580, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
So are you abstaining too? So it passes 5-0 with 2 abstentions. Thank you.
All right. Carrying on. The third action item we have, which would be approved with approval of this report, is the superintendent evaluation plan. So first of all, a big thank you to members Oswald, Kirby, and Trinka, as well as the superintendent for taking this on. The practice of evaluating a superintendent is among the most important functions of a school board. And I know that we've received substantial training from the Minnesota School Boards Association as members about the value of this practice. So first, why do we evaluate the superintendent? Well, a quality superintendent evaluation process provides benefits not only for a school board and its superintendent, but also benefits the school community and the community at large by allowing school board members to follow school district progress and learn about a superintendent's ongoing professional development, providing input, feedback, and support for a superintendent to help him or her improve throughout the year, creating and establishing a climate of trust and collaboration, providing the school community and the community at large with assurance that the priorities are being addressed, and providing oversight and assurance that a school board's vision, priorities, and policies are being implemented as intended. Getting to that, the goal for this year's superintendent evaluation are as follows. Implementation of the tool of equity accountability. So the benchmark for fully accomplishing this goal was set at implementing the tool 5 times in the next year. That would be considered accomplished. Any less would be considered satisfactory as long as it had been used. And then not accomplished would be no implementation whatsoever. The second goal is to decrease disproportionate out-of-school suspensions for subjective reasons. To accomplish this goal would mean that progress is made for all target student groups identified. There's an out-of-school suspension plan the district has developed wherein the criteria are developed much more thoroughly than I'll share here, but that was also shared in our HR committee, and those are available. So if we see progress in all student groups, that will mean the goal is accomplished. In some, that would mean satisfactory progress, and in none, of course, not accomplished. The third goal is related to dissertation completion. So satisfactory progress would mean that the dissertation final draft is completed and that a defense may be scheduled. So I know there are committee members involved with this, so I'd like to open the floor for any comments or added information they'd like to share.
Member Oswald?
I believe we had discussion, and we as a subcommittee had decided that we wanted to add in the half-year evaluation, and the superintendent was going to get a form for that also. So we will know progress going on. And I believe those are all contained in private meetings anyway, so just know that they will happen.
Superintendent?
The conversations happen in private, but there is a public summary at the year-end evaluation.
Member Lefter-Kemp.
Yeah, I appreciate again the committee that worked on this, and also appreciate Member Gorham that you kind of shared the role of the school board in evaluating the superintendent and the training that we've received from the Minnesota School Board Association. We have a lot to thank our association for, and this is one example of it. So I know we had a lot of good discussion at the committee meeting, so I don't really have any specific questions there. I just wanted to confirm, I guess, with the superintendent that all that was just said, laid out, you are in agreement with, and because that's a piece of it as well. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you. You know, it was great to work with the subcommittee on this. We had some really good discussions about what the board would like to see and directions to move in. that would also align with our district goals. I do think that this evaluation tool will be more helpful in our goal setting as a district and the direction that we're headed as a district than the previous evaluation tool, although it was extremely thorough. I do agree that in many of the areas you were asked to provide a ranking, you're not really a part of that, and so I think that it wasn't always very objective. And this is very clear, and it will be a useful tool for the entire district as we move forward.
Member Lofold.
So my question just revolves in that little bit that Member Oswald just shared about a 6-month or a half-year review. Is that what you are? So are there then goals and expectations around that half-year mark? Like, you mentioned something about 5 tools of equity. Well, if that is meant for being, satisfactory or meeting that goal, I worry about a 6-month review when those goals, I don't want to miss, so what's your half-year mark? What if all of the opportunities for data collection on the suspensions and just all of the, but then this is, I suppose, what an evaluation of a superintendent is some of it is all dependent on his staffs below him, the principals and the teachers and all of that, which that's what his job is to make sure they do their job. So what is our plan for that half-year evaluation? I would hate to set up something.
Superintendent?
I think it will be more of a check-in where we are with those goals. I will produce some evidence of progress, action steps that we've taken towards those goals, and then the feedback is just a narrative feedback of making progress on these goals. And that's not a public piece. It's not the formal evaluation. It's mid-year evaluation.
Member Sanstead.
I looked back and I think that we haven't done an evaluation since 2016, and so I'm wondering when. So if we're approving this plan this evening, we're setting these goals for a year from now, I presume. Does that mean that 6 months from now is the half-year check-in? I'm just looking for the timeline.
That was my understanding. It would be 6 months from after we approve it. Member Leffler-Kemp.
2 quick things. I would like it in writing what the expectation is for that half-year check-in, and I just think that's good process. And then I believe the reason we hadn't done the evaluation, and Mr. Swartzky, is because as part of his contract, there has to be agreement on his evaluation, and so that was the only reason, Member Sonstead, we hadn't done it. Is that right, Mr. Swartzky? Or am I confused?
That is correct.
Okay.
So at that time, we did the last one. And I don't know if this makes any difference in where you're going with this, too. We try to coordinate that last review with the state of the school district type of address that we did, and then that review was the results of that were shortly after that.
Okay, so just to follow up, so that would be in November when we have done the last few years the state of the school district, right? So in terms of kind of planning for the future.
The results. Yeah, actually, I think we did then usually in December or January, following that November.
Yeah, we had a different one.
When I began, we would do the state of the school district in January, and then the evaluation was in February, and then with World's Best Workforce, the state of the district turned into the annual meeting, which was required by statute, and it said that it needed to be in the fall. And so what was the State of the District in January, moved to an October, November date, and that's why the evaluation changed along with it. There's nothing magical about when that occurs. Going to a goal-based evaluation, it seems more logical that it would be, January for mid-year and July for end of year, so that we have all of the work done, and it follows the school year more than the World's Best Workforce piece. The annual meeting still needs to be in the fall, according to statute, and that's when we would do that. But that doesn't necessarily affect a goal-based evaluation.
I can speak for the committee. I think we said 6 months from the time we passed it, which would mean the end of February for the 6th month. And then end of the summer, August would be a year.
That's not what I remember.
Well, Member Oswald.
What I remember the discussion being was that we wanted to have the half year in November or December to allow for current members, because you wouldn't want to evaluate a superintendent the first month after an election and you're seated. And then since a lot of these goals aren't final until the end of the school year, that the final one be in June or July. So that's the way I remember it anyway.
If we do that in November, that's 3 months.
It is.
Which means it's probably not very useful.
We have to do it at some point. If it's 3 months, it's 3 months. He's still working on his goals. And to address Member Lofald's question, there's an MSBA form for a midterm evaluation. So, and most of this data won't be available until the end of the school year. So it's impossible to evaluate him on per instance or anything like that. It's much more of do you feel comfortable in moving forward? What's in your way? What's not? How can we support you? What do you need? Those kinds of things.
Member Trinka.
Yeah, I think I'm remembering similar to Member Oswald. The other pieces, we wanted to make sure we had your final one done, I think by, was it like August? Because then we would have all the data from the summer, and we also want to avoid election season for doing the final evaluation.
I'm on, but just wanted to. I guess in giving the report and opening the floor, I was just hoping to open the floor to committee members to add any information I might have missed. I think there's maybe a few things to iron out, but is it possible we could work these out in committee?
Approve the plan with what remaining to work out, the date of the midterm and the final evaluation? I mean, that seems to be what's in discussion right now. Member Oswald.
Maybe we just skip a midterm one this first year in implementation, recognizing that 3 months is not okay.
Well, we haven't had one for a long time, which means we probably should. But if it was 3 months and it was merely a feedback, all right. Superintendent agrees, and he's the one being. So the evaluation would take place in November, midterm one, and the final one in July, end of July. That seemed appropriate. Okay. All right. With that understanding, we can write that in. All right. Is there any other discussion? Okay.
All right. Last on the agenda is future items, or information items, sorry. Understand that the Duluth Integration Specialist Collective Bargaining Agreement is in progress. It was tentatively approved at the time we had met, and just needed a little more vetting with the full membership, and so I would anticipate we'll probably see that next month.
Yeah, that is correct. The full membership did vote on it, and they did pass on there. So now we'll get the full contract out to the board.
All right. And with that, I move the Human Resources Committee report for August 2018, noting that I do intend to pull item number 1.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Trinka. Any discussion? Member Gorham wants to pull item 1. Member Counselor Camp?
I just want to make one comment. Labor Day is coming up in just a few short weeks here, and I just want to use this opportunity to thank Mr. Swirsky for the work he does with our staff across the district, and both of you for your work across the district, just developing a good work environment and really working to make sure all of our staff get the variety of kinds of support that we can provide them as a school district. So in honor of Labor Day, thank you both for your roles in doing that.
Thank you. Member Gorham.
Yeah, I'd like to pull item number 1.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just for a separate vote, so that I may abstain due to conflict of interest.
All right.
Should we vote on one first?
Yep, vote on one first. All right. So it's Member Gorham has asked for a separate vote on item 1. Is there any discussion on this? I don't think we need a second. So all in favor of approving, I'll second it if we need a second. All in favor of approving item 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
Thank you. All right. Then we can go on to the entire report that's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the rest of the HR report, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Then it passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute break before we get into Business Committee. Member Lowfold.
I'm glad it's her, not me.
No.
You got the gavel. You got the gavel, Jill.
Yeah, you've been gavelled.
You've been gaveled. Okay, just good at relationships. That's a good thing.
All right. Now that we are all reassembled, Member Trinka.
Great. So we'll reconvene with a report back on the business committee. As folks can imagine, the majority of our time was spent the other week discussing the updated budget, and I'm going to need some help walking through that, and then also discussing referendum planning. As always, we had lively discussion around policies and regulation changes. The majority of those were first readings, so we will have updates to those at our next business committee meeting, with the exception of the website accessibility policy. I appreciate the work that the district put into ensuring that we are totally compliant on that front. Moving down to contracts, we just had one this month with a person who is going to be providing mental health services to children in the classroom with disabilities and mental health conditions, which is, we always need more of those. Moving on to resolutions. We will start with Resolution B-8-18-3581, acceptance of donations to Duluth Public Schools. Whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires a school district to accept donations by a resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full, and whereas acceptance of the donations in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools. Now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described donations from said organizations in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to those various individuals and organizations. So we want to thank Miners Corp for in-kind contributions to Staff Development Day. So with that, I move Resolution B-8-18-3581.
Second. Seconded by Member Leffler-Kemp. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of Resolution B-8-18-3581, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Then it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Great. The next resolution is Resolution B-8-18-3582, modification of the fiscal year 2019 budget. Whereas on June 28, 2018, the school board approved Resolution B-6-18-3564, accepting the adoption of the fiscal year 2019 budget. Whereas modifications are necessary to maintain a balanced budget, now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of School District Number 709, St. Louis County, State of Minnesota, that the modified fiscal year 2019 budget as presented to the school board be adopted. With that, I move Resolution B-8-18-3582.
Second.
Seconded by Member Sandsted. Any discussion?
I would just ask if you could, maybe the superintendent could just do a brief community update on the process that we went through with ARC on developing the modified budget.
Yes, I can. They really did go through the budget thoroughly. They started with our enrollment projections because that is really the core of our general fund budget. We did make some adjustments based on their findings in a couple of grade levels. Things were pretty close, but there were some adjustments necessary. And then really went through the budget, and I could have Peggy speak to this too. Went through the budget pretty much department by department, speaking with everyone about different budgets. They looked at all of the salaries for all the employees because that is our largest expenditure line. And all in all, they reported having a very good experience working with all of the department heads. They were very thankful for the time and effort that people are putting into the process. At the end of the day, the differences that they found amounted to $1.9 million. And then we, as a district team, working with the information that we had gathered through QSC, through board conversations, and meeting with all of our departments, made adjustments within the budget to make sure that we would end the year with a balanced budget. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Peggy?
No, that was no.
Oh, okay. Trying to get to my document so I can review that. Most of the, there it is. Most of the adjustments came down to just a few. The largest adjustment was from making an insurance payment out of our federal trust. Federal trust is an account that builds up over time, and the last couple of years with increased with the increased economy, we've been able to realize more revenue from those funds. So a one-time payment of $1.2 million was made on our insurance using the federal trust funds, and that will begin to build up once again. Special education, we were able to make an adjustment of $400,000. That was using actual costs versus budgeted costs, which we have to do for special education anyway for our reimbursement paperwork. And then adjustments based on our current student population in special education. As students move out or they graduate, our need levels change from building to building, and so adjustments are made to positions. And then there were a couple of items that, based on historical data, we hadn't spent the entire amount that had been budgeted, so we were able to budget less in those areas. And then we made an additional $200,000 shift from LTFM for projects and staff charged to LTFM rather than general fund, and then various different departments throughout the district made smaller shifts, probably the largest of which was in our curriculum department for about $50,000. And then there were a lot of items, anything from postage to fuel to travel reimbursement to any departments that were able to make adjustments to their budgets to make up whatever we could. At the end of the day, 77.6% of our budget goes to student services. 4.5% is district and school administration, which includes clerical and office supplies, principals, assistant principals. District supports, that's other departments like HR and payroll and business, is 3.7% of the budget. Building operations, that's anything that it takes to run our buildings, from lights to heat to plowing, anything, is 14.2% of the budget. So I think that pretty well summarizes what changes were made and what our focuses were on.
Is there any other discussion? Member Leffler-Kemp?
Not so much discussion as just, again, great question, Member Trinka. I appreciated your presentation you gave us and the charts that you had and kind of how you laid that out. So for the public, that presentation is also available in more detail if people want.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded to, what's the number here? B8-18-35-82, moved and seconded to accept this resolution, pass this resolution. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Then this passes unanimously.
All right. Moving on to our next resolution. How, Chair Kirby, would you like me to go about reading this?
I have to get it up here so I can see it. It's very long.
That was funny.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I have to find the number.
Page 58.
Okay, I'm going to move Resolution B-8-18-3583, resolution relating to renewing the general education revenue of the school district and increasing the general education revenue of the school district and calling an election therein.
Second.
Moved by Member Trinka, seconded by Member Sandsted. Now, is there any discussion on this? See if I've got the right resolution up here. This has the questions listed on it, does it not?
Yes. It does.
Okay, that's the one I want. Okay. Member Sandsted.
Yes. I'm going to make a motion to amend this resolution.
This is 83, yes, okay.
And my motion is to amend Resolution B-8-18-3583 as to the third ballot question, replacing the amount of $335 per pupil with $375 per pupil, and directing district administration to present this ballot question as funding for an enhancement to the secondary school schedule.
So there's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Oswald. So is there any discussion on this amendment? Member Oswald.
I seconded this for sake of discussion because it's worthy, I think, for transparency reasons to know what we think about this. I think a secondary schedule change in our secondary schools is vital to how we grow and how we attract more students. I'm not sure that this is the right time or the place for that question, but I wanted to hear from my colleagues about their thoughts because this is something that's near and dear to my heart, near and dear to all of the community that talked to me. I know that this affects every student in our school district just as much as technology would because it means more education. The problem is the plan. And when we got presented with the plan and the recommendations, well, I shouldn't say recommendations, with the 5 options that were vetted out from all of the scheduling options that happened, it kind of just got lost in a deep hole. And we have to dig that out, and we have to brush it off, and we have to bring it forward. I'm willing to vote this down and vote against this, only with the reassurance that we are going to be focused on moving this forward and making this one of our board priorities because our community deserves this. Our community deserves more education and more opportunities to take more electives and pursue their passions. So I would like to listen to my colleagues before I can make up my mind.
Member Sandsted.
I have a number of reasons for forwarding this motion, and you'll have to indulge me a little bit. I don't talk a lot, but I'm going to talk a bit here. The first reason I think that we should support putting this ask for public funding towards the secondary school schedule is because this idea, while not fully cooked, will be fully cooked in short order. It would be something that we can implement by the 2020 school year. We engaged a task force back in March of 2017 to research the options. They spent over a year doing that. The work was focused It was a community task force that was focused on surveys of parents, students, teachers, and administrators, and they looked at the 3 key district strategies that we have for improving student achievement, to use safe and welcoming schools, to have multi-tiered systems of support and professional learning communities. Their task was to evaluate a large number of schedule options for both middle and high school and to make recommendations. And they did that. They came up with 3 options for middle school and 2 options for the high school. It was a extensive process that we as a board asked them to engage in, and they did it. And they gave us the report in February of this year, and nothing has happened since then. Which leads me to point 2. This is a 10-year levy. This is our ask of the public for more general education fund at the local level, which is nearest to the thing that we can control as a board and as a district. The other sources of our funds are state and national, and we don't have a lot of impact on those. This is a levy asking for general education funds. It's not a tech levy, which is a separate option that we could consider in the future. But this is a 10-year levy, which means that our window to ask for anything more is unlikely to reopen for at least 5 to 10 more years. And there is a cost associated with the secondary school schedule change, which may be, there's a range depending on which of the several options we choose from, but it's not insignificant, but it's something that we need to dedicate funds to, and we don't have. I've been on the board for 3 years now, and never before have we been asked to dream big and think about what we would do with an extra couple of $1 million a year. And this is our opportunity to do that. And I think we need to look at individually what we think is best to do with that dream big money. And this is our window, and we may not see this window of opportunity again. My third reason to forward this is because we as Duluthians value music, art, language, and technical skills. And offering our children the ability to take more of those electives instead of having to choose between them is a standard that we need to meet as a district. It is the given. Right now, our current schedule leaves some of our most at-risk students taking 4 core academic courses and reading and math lab with no chance for an elective at all. And so they don't have that opportunity to try something new, to develop a new talent, to interact with students outside of their usual circle. So having an enhanced schedule would allow students to better stay engaged on their way to successfully graduating. It's also an option for integrating more outdoor education at the secondary level. Just a couple more reasons. We are in an era of skilled workforce and having a shortage of skilled workers. Industrial technology elective courses may be the first and only opportunity for some children to start down such a great path. Expansion of our CTE programs is a fundamental strategy in our World's Best Workforce Plan, and having more opportunity for more students to take CTE electives is key to success of that strategy. Changing schedules also would allow all of our students to access electives in a more equal manner. Currently, only students who can transport themselves to Denfeld and East have access to 0 hour. By either adding a 7th period or restructuring into block classes, it would allow all students who use our transportation to be able to get to school and have the equal opportunity to have that extra elective option. Finally, this amount that I've suggested comes from the $375 per pupil comes from the most expensive of the schedule options. Putting putting the task force back to work to make a final determination with our input or give us a final recommendation that we can approve could result in a significantly less costly option. And if that occurred, that would be a wonderful thing, and we would have more funds available should this levy pass to rebuild our reserves or for other needs. So there's some flexibility built in there. So those are the reasons that I think that we should support going ahead with this levy dedicated, the third tier dedicated to secondary school schedule change.
Member Gorham.
I think both options that we have on the table for question 3 are intriguing, valuable to consider, and would add value to our district. My personal feeling is that I favor the technology tool that we do have in there right now. And my reasons for that are, I have several. Number one, there is, in my review of the research, there is moderate evidence that it does work to enhance student achievement. Now, I'm not a professional educator. I will certainly give the floor to people in the room who have more expertise than I, but there's a key distinguishing factor. As we know in science and research, you need a body of evidence to make evidence, to claim that evidence is strong. The distinguishing factor that makes technology successful for achievement is staff development, investing in staff development. That is not something we'd be able to do with a technology referendum in a coming year. This levy question provides enough funding to ensure that not only do we have the tools that we need to be replacing in our classrooms that we are currently using, but to provide the staff development to implement them to fidelity. And I'm also aware that we will have the tech support staff available, as well as the infrastructure to support use of these items. So, I mean, that's my main thing, is if it supports student achievement, if it can impact all students, to me that makes sense. I understand the concerns about the schedule. I do think that with added technological resources, it could open doors about how we do things in terms of what classes students are able to take and when. So if you have a device, we have a certified online school. What other opportunities does that open up? When I look at the schedule, I guess I did review some information. It was a presentation in February, I believe it was, and that's a community that did really good work, and I want to honor and respect that, but I didn't hear a firm recommendation from them. I heard ideas that still needed to be vetted and shared and explored more further with staff, and I'm not sure that these options presented would necessarily improve and have full support of the community when everything's vetted. That's the information I have right now. Thank you.
Member Trinka.
So I think we heard this from folks earlier today, and we've been hearing it over the course of the last couple of weeks. I wish we had all the time in the world to vet these different options. You know, as I shared with folks last week, I wish that we had the opportunity to explore enhancing our early childhood education programs, considering that our largest percentage of people in our district who are living in poverty and who are homeless are children under the age of 5. And so if we want to talk about really bending the curve, I think that's where we needed to start. I feel like the technology piece and the schedule change is potentially putting us in a place where, I mean, both are going to need a significant amount of planning. We know that because our current technology plan, for example, doesn't include professional development. And I know from what we've heard from the superintendent and the assistant superintendent that the professional development piece will be a significant component of of the work plan for the implementation of this. So regardless of what plan we choose, there's going to be a lot of planning work that goes into it. I understand that there are contractual challenges associated with, especially with the teacher's contract, with this as well. And so I think I know I was told last week that we're on schedule, and we have 2 days, right, to get this to the clerk. So we do have, I think the more robust conversation we can have around this tonight, the better, because we've got to get this sucker nailed down tonight. That's the technical term. I'm really struggling with wanting this district to be. We have such incredible schools, and we have such incredible teachers. We saw that in the research that the polling company did, and I feel like we're kind of pitting really two needs in the district against one another, which is a really unfortunate position for us to be in. It's the reality based on the way that education is reimbursed these days. I certainly would be open to hearing from other folks around the table too what their thoughts are. I think from what I understand, the technology piece is also what we think that voters will understand a little bit differently. But I don't know if there's been any research around how technology might help, to Member Gorham's point. Is there a way that we can use that as a tool to reduce class sizes, for example? I know that the research around this, and we have a assistant superintendent who's doing his PhD on this, so he might have some more information for us. But I know that the research isn't as strong for technology as it maybe is for early childhood or for secondary education scheduling. But I got to say, this is a really tricky decision tonight.
Member Leopold.
So let's see if we can continue our conversations and see what we can do. So my overall thought is that technology is our stronger choice for this year, because I feel our technology is in crisis. You heard from 3 teachers that came to the podium. You'll hear from this one as well, that in my classrooms at Denfeld, there weren't enough strong working computers for my classes to go to finish their research, to write their essays. And then talk about inequity. So many of those students that had opportunities of computers at home could finish that assignment outside of class. Those that did not, I took longer class periods to finish projects. If we go to a technology referendum and allow Chromebooks and devices on an equal basis, then I believe that classroom teachers will have more time to cover important materials and projects and presentations, because my experience is that what might have taken only 3 days had to take 5 to 7, because we had to get into a computer lab for all people. But half my class was done with the projects because they had access to computer devices at home. So I could see where a technology referendum could equal and give equity across the board. You heard Mr. Jones say that they fight over classroom Chromebooks at East, but they have enough to go around and share, and that's not true across our district. And I think Member Oswald has spoken to that as well. She knows very well, where Chromebooks are and where they're not, and they're not equal across the board. So when we're really looking at the tool of equity and what it's really going to bring to the table, then I'm stronger in supporting technology this year. I like Member Oswald's thinking. Talk about dream big. I want to dream big and come back to our community in 2 years with another referendum. That's dreaming big, because we'll have 2 years to show our community that we are listening to them, that we are willing to have conversations. And one thing I've really appreciated about our board is that we are willing to work. I just think that computers are at a crisis. In my conversations with Bart Smith and just my own experience in the high schools, our computers are only able to handle a certain level. I think we've got Windows 7 right now. Well, our computer monitors aren't going to be able to upload any updates onto those versions. So our current status in classrooms across our district are weak. And then the access, especially in the middle school and high school, when testing happens and all of our labs are shut down for testing for 3 to 4 weeks, that's unthinkable when languages use the labs, English uses the labs, math, special education. We all are fighting for 90 computers, and that's just not allowing our students. But these are my real reasons. That's the crisis I see as a teacher. But then I'm going to say that that technology allows our kids to learn anywhere at any time. So talk about maybe doing some creativity around offering classes, electives, languages via the device is out there. It's out there. There's Google apps that can make a lot of things happen with devices in our buildings. I think that computers open doors for learning. I think that online access in classrooms significantly broadens the scope of any learning experience that I have ever had in my classroom. Triggering information, creative thinking, collaboration, classroom environments can be tailored, to master all kinds of levels. You heard Assistant Superintendent last week talk about individualized instruction and the work that's being done to try to decrease the achievement gap or the opportunity gap. I think devices or technology, our technology levy could address that. It's good for remediation within teachers. I can give different levels of reading to my classes so my ninth graders stay engaged. One of the things that always happens in classrooms is that some students aren't reading at the level of the literature that we have. And devices in classroom, Chromebooks will allow me to individualize our learning plan. It's already happening in the elementary, and they're kind of on board. I think this would bring our middle schools and our high schools as well. I think that technology and the levy and Chromebooks would help make learning real. They would give access to students that they need to be successful in school and in life. And I just think in today's age, computer literacy is an integral component of any student's learning plan. And by providing students with access to the greatest learning tool ever invented, whether you like it or not, Luddite, it is the internet. And I meant that in a respectful, camaraderie way. I know you prepared your remarks and I prepared mine. And so I just think that they would gain unprecedented access to resources and information. And so I'm wanting to dream big as well. I want to dream big with technology. I want to dream big with the fact that we're going to pass question 3. And this board then is going to gain, I think, approval, and they're going to see us as working hard. And I think that will give us credibility to then go back to them and ask for the high school and middle school schedule change.
I think that I'll talk since nobody else's light is on. I have direct experience with school schedules right now with 2 kids in high school and just having gone through middle school where they had to make tough choices. So I see all that, and I applaud the work of the committee that did the review of all of the different schedule changes, and I don't want that study or those studies to sit on a shelf or a floppy disk, if anybody knows what that is anymore, or 80-column IBM cards going back even farther than that. It needs to be brought forward, and I hope that it will. On the other hand, I think that if we take the data that we have, the Leatherman study showed, if you look at what they strongly supported, by far the strongest support was for decreasing class size. The second one was for technology. If you take strongly support and support, they all come out equal. But if you look at strongly support, second was technology. So I think that it has the support of the general public. How many of us are using phones we got 10 years ago? How many of us have laptops, if we have them, that we bought 5 years ago, or are they newer than that? But we expect our kids in the schools to do this at this point in time. And it's not only the computers. I think that it's very important, whoever brought up that we need support, professional support for the teachers, and evaluation of how this is going. But I think that I would support the technology question. I think it has a better chance of passing, but I do think that we need to, as Member Lofald said, not drop the school schedule. I think that's really important too. Member Sandsted.
Yeah, I just wanted to address this was raised earlier in the public comment, and Member Lofald also referenced the tool for, let me get the right name, Tool for Equity Accountability. And number 3 asks, how have representatives from these groups, historically underrepresented groups, been collaboratively engaged in the decision? And I just want to remind us that we should not throw around representations that decisions have been run through this very important tool when they have not. So I just wanted to.
Member Oswald.
I'm looking for further clarification on your statement that class size was clearly the first, the highest need, and then technology was the second or most supported, because I'm looking at the slide from our July 17th or July 19th meeting of what people would support a tax increase for additional funding to, and the support numbers are all equal. Lower class sizes is 73%, and the early childhood technology and changing the high school schedule is 72%.
Correct. But he then said, if you broke that down into who was strongly supported and who supported, strong support was 46% for lower class size, 43% for updated technology, 36% for high school schedule, and 39% for childhood, early childhood. So that was strong
Thank
support.
you for that. Thank you for that clarification, because I did not have that information here.
You're right. It was all 72% if you took all of it together.
Right. And so I think when you look at those that support and strongly support, it's still, they're all equally available. And so that complicates this third question. I know we need the technology. I know we have a technology plan. The speakers earlier today were talking about issues that are going to happen whether or not we pass a technology referendum. We have a technology plan. Their smart boards are failing. Their smart boards are going to be removed. They're going to get a giant TV and, with a computer or Chromebook or something attached to it. Those are all happening regardless. Their computer labs are going away, and they'll be given a cart of Chromebooks instead. That's all happening. Unless we vote to change it, unless we figure out how to pay for it to be different. This is one way to do that. But I campaigned, and one of my reasons I wanted to be on the school board is because I want my kids, and I want all of our kids to have more opportunity to become better educated people. I think the point missed is that every other school district surrounding us offers at least a 7-credit day somehow. And we don't. But the argument can be made, the same thing about, one-to-one technology too, that most of them have one-to-one technology and we don't. But I think the education is a more vital need. The one-to-one Chromebooks is a tool. A schedule change is providing more education. I think I know how I'm going to vote.
Student Member Carlos. Thank you. Oh, I turned her off. Sorry.
Okay. I obviously know it's to my extent of things, but if you guys want to hear from a student point of view of these two things, because they're both really great things that obviously both things would love to see the change, but from me personally as a student, I feel technology would be the first one I would want to see changed just because of how much it's needed, because that's just the way that things are going, and in the future, and that's classes, and it's just as a student, I would rather see the technology first and then the classes, because there's so many things you can do with the technology. There's online classes, and the thing with our labs being used up, and there's nothing we can do, and we have to postpone what we're doing in class that day and fill up, and it's almost wasting our time in the class when the technology isn't there to use, because then the thing for that day is totally thrown away, and it's just kind of wasting the time that we are already given. So if we had the technology during the time and enough for everybody, it would enhance the time that we have for education that. Yeah. But that's just kind of all I had to really say.
Thank you. Member Leffler-Kemp.
Great, thank you for your comments. I too, as I thought about this, talked to a lot of students, so I appreciate you speaking up. I think all of you know I have 4 children, and I have a high schooler, and I've been around the district long enough to see a 6-period day, a 7-period day, a new middle school program that took many years and I sat on that committee to really think through a big change. And scheduling is a big change in the district. And when I talk to parents of high school age kids, middle school kids, and I talked to a lot of kids. We just had a few bonfires this week. They were in agreement with you, Maggie, in terms of what's important for them and their learning today. And it is more technology. It's using that as a tool. And I'll tell you, all of you have been sharing a little bit personally. My oldest daughter, we did not have a computer at home for her. And so we really did rely on technology that the school provided. Like I know there's many parents that have that right now. But as I've talked to my kids about, my own kids, as well as other kids about this, they really stressed the role that technology has played and hasn't played, and member help me out here, Lofold, sorry about that, really kind of laid out a lot of good points about just how it opens the world for students. And so as I've thought about this, of course, I support and would like us to see more electives offered. I would like us to look at that valuable information that the committee put together, but I don't feel like we're there yet, and I see it as just really a work in progress. We had one of the committee members speak to us tonight about just his feeling on where that committee's at as well, and so I will be voting for keeping it with the technology. I'll be voting because I also think that technology helps all children, from working on many levies, and I shared this last week in the committee, I know that as we go to the voters, we need to have them see how this money is going to be used for all students. And so I'm just really convinced that we need to have question 3 be about technology, and that's how I'll be voting.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion around this amendment? Then we should vote on this. It's been moved and seconded to amend Resolution B8-1835-83 to replace the third ballot question, or to change it, amend it, replacing the amount of $335 per pupil with $375 per pupil, and directing the district administration to present this ballot question as funding for an enhancement to the secondary school schedule. So if a yes vote on this means that this would then replace the technology question on the ballot, a no vote would mean that it would not, and we'd still have to pass the full resolution. So all in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Maybe we should take a roll call vote so we can get it down.
Member Gorham? Nay. Chair Kirby?
Nay. No.
Member Leffler-Kemp?
No.
Member Lofold?
No.
Member Oswald?
Yes.
I am voting yes. Member Trenka?
Yes.
The vote is 4 against and 3 for.
3-4. So it fails. Okay. Next we will go back then to the original resolution, the number of which I don't have before me. B183583. Is there any further discussion on this? Member Oswald.
I just want to make clear that I will wholeheartedly support a technology question on the levy. I am okay with the vote that just happened. We need the technology. But I also think that this is a great opportunity that we can't lose on the momentum for schedule change. And we need to formalize that somehow, some way in the coming month, because we can't let that sit and collect dust. We need to move on it because our community deserves that.
Thanks. Member Sandsted.
I agree that I am also going to be supporting this technology question. And I have some questions because I want to ensure that we are putting our best foot forward with the public. So I'm wondering how often, I looked at the technology plan from 2013, 2014 that I know we're working on updating. It looks, I think the foundation is to have one-to-one Chromebooks for students, correct? Okay. How often are we planning to replace the Chromebooks within this plan?
The plan was that every 4 years, so a student would get a device in 6th grade and in 9th grade. That in the elementary years, they wouldn't necessarily be going home. We had conversation about 5th grade, maybe starting to take on some of those middle schooler skills, getting ready to take home your device. And there's discussion about at which grade are tablets more appropriate versus Chromebooks. And so, but that had a 4-year cycle, and that is the given lifespan of a Chromebook.
And to follow up then with that, I thought that part of the discussion last week was looking at the one-to-one plan being secondary only, but the old plan, 13-14, included devices for kids K-12, and it sounds like you're thinking about devices for K-12. It's part of this.
Yep.
Okay. Can I keep going, Chair?
Sure.
All right. I'm wondering if you can speak, Superintendent, to the process for the plan that was developed in 2013 and 2014. Who was involved and what that process looked like?
At the time, the innovation department was still in existence. And so Tammy Wilkins and the innovation specialists, along with Bart from technology, and probably some of the field techs from technology. It's been a few years. I'm having a little trouble recalling who all was on the team. But they had worked to develop a plan for implementation of what it would take to go to one-to-one, including what kind of staff development would be needed, what kind of field tech would we have to add, as far as bandwidth, how much would it take. We've been taking steps to upgrade our infrastructure to be able to handle more Wi-Fi. Can you repeat your other questions?
That was, so who was involved and what was the process? Did it come before the board at some point?
I would have to go back and look at, I recall conversations and there being different levels based on the funding that was available. I would have to, I can't remember if it was at a board meeting or if it was committee of the whole. I would have to go back and look.
Okay.
Maybe you remember.
And if, presumably there was more than the plan that you sent us in terms of especially discussing things like infrastructure and Wi-Fi and stuff like that, and I hope you can provide that to us. I'm looking forward to reviewing the updated plan. And presumably you've got that, given that we've come up with a quote for how much money we need for this.
Yep.
Thanks.
Member Trinka.
Thank you. I want to echo Member Sandsted's feedback about, while not wanting to micromanage, to see, as a person who works in technology, I know how fickle technology budgets can be, and then you put them in the hands of 8-year-olds and everything changes. So just want to echo as well our strong support of this. And just for a point of clarification, this is a general education referendum, not a technology referendum. And that's just, even though our third question is about technology, it's a separate sort of funding. So I want to thank everyone for the really thorough discussion around this as well. And then last but not least, when you're putting a new committee together, I think it's really important that we have strong representation from our communities of color and from some of our social justice groups across the district, because I agree with you, Member Lofeld, that technology can be a tool in aiding us as we head down our pathway towards equity, but it can also be disadvantageous depending on different, like broadband, for example, or home internet. So I just want to make sure that we're being thoughtful as we put this plan together so it benefits all of our students.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, then we can vote on resolution. I have to bring it up here again. Which one is it? B 183583. So a yes vote on this resolution will mean that the three ballot questions as listed will stand. And a no vote will mean that you don't agree with the resolution. So all in favor of this resolution say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Great. So just to wrap up the business committee report, we had an update on the sale of property and some additional work that Greg is doing to try and bolster additional enthusiasm around some of the properties that we have available. And then we very briefly, because the meeting, as you can imagine, ran very long, discussed a number of contracts and then the facilities management and capital project status report. As always, thank you, Mr. Spooner. And with that, I move the business committee report from last week.
It's been moved and seconded by Member Oswald to accept the business committee report. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the business committee report, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have any special resolutions? I don't think there are any questions that members may have, things they want to talk about. Then, but I can rule on that whether it's out of order. I don't think there's anything worth talking about now.
I'm closing my computer down.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Lofald. All in favor? I don't see any discussion about that. So all in favor of adjourning say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned unanimously. Thank you very much.